Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate, with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week, my guest is Joe Fairless. Joe is an author, syndicator of $300+ million under control. He has a few single-family homes from his beginnings. He's the host of the podcast, The Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever, which is the longest-running daily real estate podcast. And I'm actually a guest on episode 1304.
Yes, you are. I enjoyed that conversation as well.
That was great. Is there anything else that I missed or anything you'd want to add to that?
Oh, I have a philanthropic component into everything that I do, either directly or indirectly. All the profits from my books, I've written a couple books, go towards junior achievement to help underserved kids, and I've got some other things too.
I know there's a lot of people right now that keep talking about the impending doom of this real estate crash or this next bubble that's going to happen. I know you've listened to, or you've had about 1,300 guests on your show, and
Yep.
You've seen people who've went through this, and you've seen people that didn't make it through it. Have you found
Right.
any sort of common mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's not a matter of the market. If you lose your property, it's a matter of your business plan and your approach that you took, in my opinion. I've interviewed, I think, almost 1,400 real estate investors, and perhaps literally 1,400 real estate investors. I'm not sure what episode number I'm on now. Plus, as you mentioned, I've got $300 million worth of apartment communities that we control. I have part ownership in every single one of those, and I have some single family homes. So I've got not only first-hand experience and I'm actively doing deals, but also I've interviewed a whole lot of people. And the result of that experience in those conversations is something that I came up with. I call it the 3 immutable laws of real estate investing. And if we follow these laws, then regardless of the cycle, because I agree there's going to be some market correction that comes up, that is coming up. If we follow these laws, then we're going to be all right. We certainly won't be as well as if that correction did not take place, unless we're hoarding cash and we're waiting on that to happen, and then we start plunking it down at the perfect moment. But I don't know when that moment's going to be. I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't pretend to know. So the 3 things that I have found and that I follow: 1 is buying for cash flow, not appreciation. People who got burned when the economy took a tank big time, about 9 to 10 years ago, they got burned because they bought for appreciation. They did not cash flow properties. If you have a cash flowing property and the market goes down, then you might not make as much money. But if you got tenants in your property, they're paying rent, then you've got something that you can hold on to for long run. Now, certainly your residents might lose their jobs and not be able to pay rent, and that goes into job diversification within the market that you select. You select a market like in Michigan, in the U.S., in Michigan, market like Flint, Michigan, where I was born. That's trouble, because you've got an industry that's solely focused on automotive, or at least it was. They're trying to diversify now. Compare that to Dallas-Fort Worth, where you've got all sorts of different employers. So you want to find a diversified market. But if you buy for cash flow, not appreciation, you're going to be all right. Number 2 is if your debt becomes due whenever the market correction takes place. So if your loan becomes due in a very inopportune time, then you're going to be in trouble, because you're either going to have to sell it at a rock bottom price, or you're going to have to get financing that's not very favorable, and that could cost you the property, or at minimum it could cost you a lot of cash flow. So putting on long-term debt or long-term financing would be the second thing to do. And then the third thing is to have adequate cash reserves. People who got in trouble when the market correction took place, the last one, they might have had cash flow. They might have had long-term debt. But if they didn't have this third thing, adequate cash reserves, then if 4 or 5 boilers went out at once and they didn't have money to actually pay for those boilers, then they were without a property, because you can't get financing very easily. A private loan might cost you a whole lot, might be cost prohibitive, and certainly traditional financing is non-existent during the very, very bad time.
Yeah, I know you do a 5-year syndication with an exit. What would your company's policy be if, say the market was on a downturn during the 5-year cash out period?
Well, number one, capital preservation is our first and foremost goal. And that is our priority. That is what we make all of our decisions based on. And it's once we have capital preservation in place, so meaning if and when a market correction takes place, we're going to look at what's driving this. Is it something we see as short-term or as long-term? If it's short-term, we need to get out. We're going to get out, preserve capital, and exit. Won't make nearly as much as what we thought we'd make, but ideally won't lose money either. And if we do lose money, we're still going to preserve as much as we can. But we put on, for the most part, long-term financing on our deals. So
that way you don't have to exit then, right?
Exactly. That way we don't have to exit if we don't need to. Now, I said for the most part, because for some deals, we'll do a bridge loan for 5 years, but we'll plan on exiting out after 2 years of that bridge loan. And if a market correction happens in year 1 or 2, then we have 3 more years to figure something out. Whereas if we had a business plan and we planned on exiting out a loan in 5 years, but we had a 5-year loan, you're not leaving yourself much wiggle room there. No. And in terms of if a market correction or when a market correction does happen, we're going to, assuming capital preservation is number one, we're then going to hold for occupancy. We will decrease our rents as much as we need to while still maintaining being competitive in the market in order to maintain occupancy. What we don't want is for people to leave, lose all that income. We'll take what we can get during a market correction. We'll hold serve as long as we can, and then we'll reassess.
What do you guys do with depreciation credits? And do you deal those out to your investors, or do you keep them for the main company? Or
yeah, we pass the depreciation through to our investors. So in reality, we are making money on the property, but technically it shows a loss on paper for our investors, and it's tax deferred, so there's a catch, and the catch is when we sell, it gets recaptured. It's not, we're not able to magically make taxes disappear, but we can magically make them deferred through proper depreciation and cost segregation, and now with the new tax code bonus depreciation for everything purchased after September of 2017, there's bonus depreciation on top of that. So our properties will show a loss, but in reality we're making money, and we're able to do distributions to our investors. The benefit to that is that those dollars can then be reinvested, tax deferred, into other things. Yep. And then when we sell, we can look to do a 1031 exchange, which would continue to defer those taxes. Or if there's not a good opportunity 1031, then there would be an exit, and long-term capital gains tax would be paid like anything else.
So you've been doing this now for a bunch of years. So have you found that it's gotten a lot easier to fund your deals?
Easier to fund deals, absolutely. Easier to find deals, the opposite. It's even with our track record, because of how competitive the market is, it's more challenging to find deals now than when I started, but whatever, it's easier to fund the deals now. I mean, there's always going to be a challenge in business, right? There's always a challenge. I mean, when we don't have challenges in life or business, we're dead. So it's just a matter of what do we do to maintain a competitive advantage and then evolve as a company. So now, I mean, the funding's not a challenge. I mean, we have 890 units under contract right now, and it's approximately a $23 million raise in total between those projects. Yep. And it was done in seven calendar days, and it was actually done on a weekend, Easter weekend. So it was done on a holiday weekend. So it's not something I take lightly, though, because every investor's dollar was earned through hard work, or for the most part, I imagine, through hard work. At least everyone I've spoken to, they haven't inherited it, or most 99% of them haven't inherited it. And even the ones who did, they're choosing to invest with us, and that's family legacy. So it's something that I don't take lightly, but it's also something that is not as much of a challenge as it used to be.
When you're doing your first deals, where did you find all your buyers? Did you
through connections that I had? So if you're raising money for a deal and you haven't yet done that, then an idea for how to do that would be as follows. One, create a spreadsheet. In that spreadsheet, have the following columns: first name, last name, how you know that person, and approximate investment amount. You'll want to take that spreadsheet and put 100 names in that spreadsheet. And if you don't have 100 names, then look at your phone, look at Facebook, look at LinkedIn, find 100 names. You can find 100 names.
Yeah.
And then the key to the spreadsheet is how you know them. So you want to identify the groups of people, or the groups that you're associated with, where you know these chunks of people, and then identify an influential person or a person you have a good relationship with within that group. Reach out to him or her and start the conversation that way, and then, assuming they're okay with it, mention their name when you talk to other people in the group. That will be a very powerful way of raising money on your first deal, because you're going in with an influencer and you're taking the network effect versus doing it on a one-off basis. Where I met my investors on my at the beginning was through the Texas Tech Alumni Advisory Board that I was on and still am on. I was working at an advertising agency, and I worked at agencies in New York City, so I knew them through that. They're former boss, former owner of the company, the CFO, my flag football team. Yep. I had one investor who I only knew from my flag football team, and then roommates. Grade school, middle school, high school, and college friend invested with me. A roommate from college invested with me, and the roommate I was living with in New York City at the time invested with me. So the different types of groups. Now, I did not do this exercise when I first got started, but I now suggest people do it, because subconsciously I did some of it, but now that I've looked back on it, I can see the best, more effective way to do it.
So you believe to get the money lined up before you get the deal?
I do. In our business, absolutely, you want to get the verbal interest lined up before you find the deal, because if you find the deal, and when I say our business, I mean we're 150 plus units. Yeah. So if you come across a good opportunity that's 150 plus units, that's very challenging if you don't have any financial connections to get the money for. Yeah. It's possible, but it's very challenging. And you will hurt your relationship with the broker or whomever sent you the opportunity if you don't close on it and it's a good deal. Therefore, if you get verbal interest, and it's verbal interest, no one's funding anything if you don't have a deal, just verbal interest. Yeah, Joe, if you find something that meets the financial goals that I mentioned to you, absolutely, I'll take a look. I'd be interested. That's all you're looking for. Okay, great. And if we find, or when we find something like that, what range of investment would you be looking at? Just so I have an idea. Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know. Depends on what the deal is, or what's your minimum. Or they might say, well, I've got $2 million in retirement accounts. I'm looking to liquidate that. Or they might say something else. Yeah. But you'll have an idea after that conversation.
If you're investing in a syndication, to make sure that the syndicator themselves were putting some of their skin in the game.
Yeah. Syndicator needs. Should the syndicator invest themselves to put skin in the game?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some cases at the beginning, the syndicator might not have money to do it, but they could put in their acquisition fee into the deal to show alignment of interest. We put in at least $100,000 I personally put in at least $100,000 now in all of our deals, and it shows alignment of interest. And I want in on that too. I mean, I want to be a limited partner and get the same returns that other limited partners are getting.
I've listened to 1,000 out of 1,300 episodes, so I was just looking at my phone beforehand, like, how many have I got through? I got 300 left out of getting all of them done. So,
wow.
So I've got through
most of them. You should write a blog post afterwards, and I would love to learn. I'd love to know what you learned from that, other than Joe's voice is really annoying now.
I believe in the Joe. I've invested in not your most recent deal, 2 ago, I guess now, because there's a couple that have popped up. But I was wondering what your favorite book was, because you always ask everybody else.
Yeah, my favorite book is the one that I'm reading at that moment, because I'm then applying the advice from that book into my business. And I was just reading this. I was walking around my backyard right before our call. There you go.
Giants?
Small Giants, yeah, by Bo Burlingham. In Small Giants, the whole premise is you can have a financially successful company without growing hundreds of thousands of employees or even hundreds of employees. And he gave 3 imperatives to follow to create a culture, a good culture. 1 is to have a higher purpose with the company. 2 is to provide unexpected moments of joy for your employees. And 3 is to have all your employees like each other and connect with each other. And there's some tactical ways you can do that. So I would say that one's top of mind right now.
You do only hard copy books? You're not into the audio or any of that?
Correct.
If somebody wanted to invest with you or wanted to reach out to you, what would be the best way to do so?
You can go to investwithjoe.com and you can fill out a form and we can establish a relationship. That's if you're a accredited investor looking to invest at least $50,000.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time, Joe. I really appreciate it.
Grateful for connecting with you again, and thanks for having me on the show.